am the Lord, I'm the Almighty God. I am the one for which nothing is too hard. And I am your shepherd, and I am the door. I am the good news to the bound and the poor. I am. That's what he
You were
said.
speaking of the grudge, holding grudges, which builds hate. And the Lord also dropped in my spirit, the grudge thing has a lot to do with fear. Because you're building these walls so you won't be hurt. Like you said, you won't be hurt. And it's the fear. A lot of stuff is built around fear.
Yeah.
Wow. See how the Lord just did that?
Yeah.
Wow. That's kind of, okay, Jesus.
Yeah.
So, the grudges, now I used to hold grudges, and I used to have the hate and what I just now learned, fear. And I've noticed that with the grudges, you build walls from the things that you don't want to get into you, but you're also blocking what needs to get into you.
Right.
So you're blocking yourself in, and you're blocking deliverance, help, love, all of that stuff out. And then like I've told you before, when you used to tell me things that people did, and I believe this is why you don't tell me stuff now. I know this is why. Because I used to hold grudges. Like, I would hold them to the death. Like, I would want the people to die. And if they didn't die, I wanted them to hurt as unto death. So you could feel everything that I feel.
Okay.
Ain't that horrible?
Yes.
But I thank God.
Hallelujah, Jesus.
But I thank the Jesus that vengeance is his.
Oh, yes.
Because he know how to get to him. Now, I can get to him physically, but that's going to heat. Nah, let me go on with something
Yes.
Because, yes. But now you spoke in your book about adoption.
Yes.
You talked about the name change. And when you're adopted, you take on the family that adopted you. You take on their name, the authority that they have over things, because that's who you are. So, adoption. When did you realize you had a new name?
Well, it's different. And that's a great story. And I'm going to make it quick. But around the age of, I was about 22, 23 is when I really came into the understanding that I belong to God and that I am welcome in his family. Dealing with the spirit of rejection and neglect from a child caused me to believe that no matter where I wasn't welcome, or I wasn't good enough for it. So I would always take a back seat, and to however it is, whatever happens, that's fine, because this is what I deserve. Somehow that's what I believed. But around the age of about 22, 23, after marriage, had a first child, going through all this kind of stuff, just trying to still find myself and realize who I am, I came to a point where I realized that I was worth being a part of God's family, and I was worth everything that he had given to me. I was worth the gifts that I had been given, and I was worth the life that I was destined to live. Even though I didn't quite know how to walk that out, I knew. So I had a feeling of adoption, and I could understand what it meant to be an heir to what God had for me. So, I'm 37 now, so actually I just received my new name.
We trust. You're faithful. God, we want you to show us your way and teach us to wait. In you we trust. He's faithful. Show us your way. Teach us to wait, oh God. For you are. Oh yeah. Come on, say it. Not with our mind. Father, we acknowledge you in all that we do. Come on.
distractions from your spirit life so that you can listen to what God is saying, and what the enemy is saying won't matter.
And you talked about that in your book. You gave an example. Can you go into that? The example when you were in your home, and I think you were in there by yourself,
Yeah.
and you had, I think you said it was the 2 red bowls.
Well, yeah, that was that morning, I had woke up. There was a lot of things going on. I was losing my home. I had already lost 2 cars. I was standing in the middle of, we had a fire in our home, so we had lost a lot of things at that point. I was in a point of just losing so much. And I was just bogged down, and I don't even remember sleeping well. I just remember getting up that morning, and I was trying to go about my daily routine, getting some things ready, and I ended up in my living room. Beautiful living room, had been redone from the fire. There was no furniture in there. Like, the only thing was in there was these 2 red bowls on the walls because it was around Christmas time. And I don't know if I called myself decorating. I don't know what I did, but there was 2 red bowls on the wall. And I was in the middle of that room, and in my time of just thinking about what was going on, I came into this spiritual fight, and I can hear it in my mind. I can hear the enemy laughing and just telling me things and just saying, well, you're losing your home. You trying to believe God, and they said you weren't going to lose nothing else, and you have to move. Your home is being foreclosed on. You don't have the money to take care of it. You've already lost 2 cars. You don't have any food in your refrigerator. There's so many things that you have lost. Where is this God that you say has got your back? Where is this God that you spend so much time in worship with? And why isn't he helping you? Why isn't he pulling you? And I came to a point where I started to believe it. I started to question, well, you know what? I guess that's true. I kind of feel like, I'm out here by myself, Lord, and, he's right. I am doing all these things. So why aren't you there for me? Why aren't you fixing these things? What's going on? What have I done wrong? And it took me back to a point where I started going back into that rejection. What did I do wrong? Why don't you like me? Why you ain't pulling for me like you should? And I ended up, to make a long story short, in a time where I couldn't even speak. I couldn't even, I could do nothing. I feel like I was losing my mind. And all I could do was just hit the floor. And I didn't even hit the floor to begin to worship. I hit the floor because I felt like I was just losing it. I felt like it was just going away from me. Like, I didn't know, at that point, I didn't care to live. I didn't know I just wanted to be gone away from that point. I just wanted to be done with it. And I could hear the enemy fighting on one end and just telling me all these things, but I still had this fight in my spirit that I knew somehow, that all this stuff couldn't be a lie. It can't be a lie. But I was on my way teetering to believing what the enemy was saying, and I couldn't speak. But in my spirit, because of what I had deposited over the years in my spirit, it started fighting for me. And I couldn't say any words. All I could do was let the Holy Spirit just speak through me. I didn't have any words. So I just began to come into a time of just worship, and where the Spirit was contending for me and fighting for me and pulling for me where I couldn't. I didn't have the strength to do it, but it was pulling for me. And all I could do was just lay in the floor and allow it. And I could hear it. It was almost as I could hear the enemy on one side and God on one side, and the angels fighting and contending for me on the other side, which ended up becoming greater. And in a moment of me trying to cry out where I thought was going to be, Lord help me, it didn't come out as Lord help me. It just came out in a beautiful song of worship, and I just began to worship God, and he just totally changed and flipped my mind, because it was leaving. But that's one of the easiest ways, because of everything that I saw in front of me. It was hard to see that God still cared for me, because this is not what I was used to. I was used to being let down. I was used to, a man doing stuff to me that I didn't want, so I'm thinking, here I go again, after all this time, you done lied to me, Lord. you know, I'm getting ready to start suffering, and I'm getting ready to start suffering unjustly. You know, you start thinking like, I didn't do this, and I don't deserve this, and this, and I did all this stuff, but here you gonna do this stuff to me. So it just the ending of the story is just, it is so important to make sure that in your times where you can, you put some deposits in. You put some deposits into worship. You put some deposits into learning God and knowing God and hearing His voice, because it's going to come a time where you won't have any words. You won't have anybody to be there with you to hold your hand and walk you through it and tell you exactly what to do. But in order to walk in that deliverance, you're going to have to know the voice of God.
You have to have that relationship. That's how you get to know. God. You have to know His word, because those are His words. This is what He said. You got to take time to listen. Because I remember Bishop Johnson, he would say, I think it was Bishop Johnson, he would talk to us about prayer and how, and you know, one of our friends, he would always pray and be speaking in tongues, crying, and then he'd get up. You can do all the talking you want to do, but you still have to take that time to listen.
That's right.
You have to listen. You got to know God's voice. Because the devil, like, to me, from what I, to my understanding, everything that God does, Satan, he tries to come in and pervert it. So he'll try to sound like the Lord and try to sound all sweet. But how do you really know how the Lord talk to me? Because sometimes the Lord be like, girl, get up. And then, you know, Satan will come like, oh, Lakeisha. Like, God don't talk to me like that. That ain't Him.
From the beginning, my life was called